Hello, welcome to the Free Will, Science, and Religion podcast. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Jamie Soden, George Ortega, David Joseph, and WSD Time. And the topic today is sort of about gender identity, transgender. People. Some people believe that people choose to be gay or straight. They choose their sexual orientation. And of course, we at the Free Will, Science, and Religion podcast understand that free will is a total illusion and that it's not as if any sexual feelings of any sort are actually a choice. It's biological. Anyone who understands enough about the science of what makes up our gender identity, would understand that we don't choose who we're attracted to with sexual orientation, and we don't choose what gender socially that we identify as or feel that we are. And so there's a lot of controversy and hatred and hostility between the free will believers who are blaming people for choosing to be gay or transgender, and the other people who are much more understanding that people don't choose this and they don't blame them. So it was actually Jamie Soden who mentioned this topic to begin with, so I'll let him speak next.
Yeah, well, there's some parts of it that's really difficult to talk about, like with the abortion topic you brought up in the previous podcast. But there was just two documentaries I watched on YouTube, and on one of them, right, there was this transgender male. I think he was he a teenager? I think he was. Doesn't matter. Anyway, he was basically a female living in a body of a male, and this guy's parent got upset at this guy, for dressing up as a woman or something like that. And then I was reading his comments on the YouTube comment section. There's a lot of people bringing God into the debate and all this stuff, and thinking, hey, what the hell does God have to do with it? I mean, if there was such thing as God, then he would be the reason why this happened in the first place.
Yeah, and Jamie, just a quick thing I'd like to mention there is, well, I used to ask the question, well, why does God create gay people if he hates them? Because that was how I was taught to understand, is that God makes us with the personality that we have, and God gives us our desires. So that's just something that always confused me when I got into reading about that back when I was still a Christian. So,
You got anything
yeah.
to say, George?
Yeah, I think, all right, what's interesting about this question is that it really kind of like it becomes two questions. First is being gay, let's limit it to that for right now, a choice. And the second question, is it wrong? Because in other words, sometimes people will say, well, it's not a choice being, people are born gay, so it can't be wrong. And I mean, in my mind, for example, let's say some people are born kleptomaniacs, some people are born psychopaths. So, naturally, again, it's not their choice to be born that way. But in the case of a kleptomaniac or some, basically what their behavior is in fact wrong. So that adds a level of complexity to this. We're trying to determine, is it a choice? And then part of the debate among a lot of people. I personally don't believe that, it's wrong in the sense that, it doesn't really cause harm, but, there are other criteria for whether something is right or wrong, and that'll be another layer to this exploration.
So is there evidence that people are actually born gay,
Well,
or is that...
David, I mean, the evidence is actually what we're presenting. In other words, if nobody has a free will, then we have to conclude that being gay is not a choice.
Right. But I guess my question would be, would it be like an environmental influence, or would it be a genetic influence, or would it be a combination, like a genetic predisposition?
Personally, I think it's both, because if you look back to the Greek society, they condoned being gay, and I think their population had more gays than ours today. I think it's about 10% of the population today. So I would think that the best answer to that is both. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I suppose you could say the same thing about things like pedophilia or paedophilia, depending on where you come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to David's question there, and this might be very relevant, is I have read some very interesting stuff. In fact, I was reading in a book at the library many years ago about, people who take, transgender people who take certain hormones, they noticed that it changed their attraction. They started, change the gender of the type of people they felt attracted to. So I think there's a nurture component. I don't think it's all just at birth, but it's, nature and nurture, just like everything else. There's a combination there. But
Yeah,
the main
I'm with
point,
this one. It's both genetics and environment.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and the main point is that either way, it's not a choice, and we shouldn't be judging people or blaming them for that.
So, on the flip side of that, when it comes to things like gay pride, that that kind of that kind of gay pride doesn't really exist either, then, or shouldn't really exist technically.
Point.
Well, with me, I always was there. I've always been the type A. I heard when they started coming out of the closet, I'm looked at it like, whatever. I never understood why people couldn't do that. I'm like, is that affecting you? No. I mean, yeah, they love each other. So what? I just shrugged it off as not my problem.
Yeah, it's not really a problem like, a lot of religious people make it sound like it is, because I just haven't, aside from the whole fact that it isn't a choice, I haven't seen any harm from people being attracted to the same gender or gay marriage being legal. I've never seen a problem with that. And
Well,
so, yeah.
Chandler, there is actually one problem. It's kind of like the problem that's relative to premarital sex. In other words, like, or just basically having more than one partner. And the problem is like that there's the risk of an unwanted pregnancy that might lead to, unwanted abortions. And the second is the risk of STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. And so, like, in the gay community, especially among gay men, they tend to be very promiscuous. They have a lot of sex. They have many sex partners. And it's not just about AIDS, which is, very high in the gay community. I think it's other STDs. So, like,
Yeah,
we
and
can't
black.
necessarily
But
say,
yeah,
we can't necessarily say that the gay lifestyle doesn't have, problems associated with it.
Yes, that's a good point to
Same with
mention,
any
George.
sexuality, really. I mean, if you have sex with any whether it's a male or female, you're still going to pass on some sort of disease if you've got one.
Yeah,
yes.
that's exactly what I was about to say, Jamie, is basically those problems, especially the whole sexually transmitted diseases problem, applies no matter what the genders are,
No, Chandler,
Mm-hmm.
my point is that among the gay community, the behavior is to be to have much more sex with multiple partners. So, I mean, I think maybe most specifically I'm saying that the gayness isn't necessarily wrong, but if there's another component of it, that leads to this, hypersexuality, that leads to a lot of unwanted diseases. I guess in the case of gays, it wouldn't lead to pregnancy, of course, but I think that's something we have to consider in terms of, like, the morality of it.
I get what you're saying now, George. You're basically saying that how we view issues of morality surrounding sexuality is an important issue. Aside from whether someone's gay or straight, how we view things still has, causal effects on things.
Or just the propensity. In other words, like, let's say we want to reduce STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. One thing we want to do is, like, discourage multiple partners, right?
Yes.
So if a certain segment of the population, be it very young people, gays, a certain other group, whatever, is having more sex, is having a lot of partners, certainly like there's nothing wrong with being a teenager who's going to have more sex. So like it's not the fact that they are who they are, but it's the behavior that's associated with it. And so again, yeah, that adds another layer to this very difficult question, about the morality of it, because that's what people are most concerned with. They, naturally, when they overcome the free will belief, they're going to be able to like explore this in more detail and arrive at the answer. But
Yes.
it is the morality that's fundamental to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
George. There's a morality that needs to be explored regardless of the free will topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Did someone else have something to say next?
Well, I had just kind of like an input here. I think George is going to get a few comments about that last thing he said. Are you saying you'd rather people not have sex or not have as many partners or
Yeah, because I can
Well,
tell
yeah,
you this right. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. Let's say we take teenagers, right?
right?
Teenagers, let's say a 13-year-old. The reason we don't issue, for example, driver's license ordinarily, I think some states maybe they do, to a 16-year-old or a 13-year-old, is because we know that at that age they may not have the focus, the concentration, the attributes necessary to drive, safely. So we're not saying that being a 13-year-old is wrong. We're saying that like 13-year-olds would probably be much more likely to drive recklessly. So like, so
Right.
applying that principle to gays, so like being gay isn't necessarily wrong, but along with being gay, apparently, and I don't know if this is changeable, perhaps it is, that along with being gay, they tend to have more partners, which tends to result in more STDs.
Sure. So wouldn't the solution to that be to kind of promote more safe sex?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think a kind of almost like an abstinence approach would be appropriate. I don't think that would work too well, to be honest with you.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah, this is very interesting, because I really think people need to be educated on every aspect of this. I think that, people are getting so hung up with the debate about whether being gay is a choice, which of course we can end that debate. They get all hung up on whether it's right or wrong in a moral sense, and then but they're dismissing the wider implications of sexuality and the risks associated with certain behaviors, and how we can have a society with less unwanted pregnancy, less sexually transmitted disease. That's a hard thing to say. Um, yeah.
Yeah, people shouldn't bring religion into it. I mean, like, I don't
Hmm.
have, I don't have a problem with people having an intercourse as long as it's like between consented partners, whether it's between adults um, or a couple of teenagers who are not much older than each other. I mean, I get that the age of consent must be obeyed and stuff, but when it comes to a small age gap like 2 or 3 years, I don't think it's as black and white. Do you, George? Yeah.
Um, no, of course, you're right. I mean, again, like, different societies have different norms, different rules. In parts of South America or Africa, yeah, like their societies are structured so a 13, 14-year-old can marry, start raising a family, and the society supports that. Society can integrate that. In our society, it would be much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the age of consent was meant to stop adults from taking advantage of them. That's all it's there for.
Yes.
When it comes to a couple of teenagers, I mean, especially with this Caitlin Hunt situation, I mean, her partner was 14 and she was 17 at the time when they were dating and stuff, and and when she turned 18, some parents like turned against her, and I'm thinking probably because she was a lesbian, because the age gap wasn't that huge, it wasn't to the point where I think lock this predator up, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
because I can't say she was a predator. I think it was most likely to do with her being a lesbian. You know, because there's a lot of people out there who would do anything to hurt a homosexual. You know.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Yeah.
what confuses me about this, guys, is why are people so particularly hostile to the whole homosexuality and gay marriage? It's still quite a mystery to me. I never
Yeah.
understood it.
Because
I
I've read, I read in the Bible. They say all it says is it's an abomination, and it doesn't say anything else really.
I think why it makes a lot of guys uncomfortable, maybe women also, is that, like, as David was pointing out before, it's not necessarily all genetic. It's somewhat environmental. So, like, for example, if gayness was actually an attribute that this society valued, I could see it'd be very clearly easy to take a 3-4-year-old, whatever, and condition that child to actually become gay. So I think that, like, basically with men who like being heterosexual, who think homosexuality is either wrong or aberrant or something, I think we are afraid of being converted, like a religious person might be afraid of being converted from being a Christian to being an atheist or something. So I think that's part of it. That's what makes it uncomfortable for a lot of guys.
Wow,
Yeah,
George,
yeah, and the fear of God belief also.
Yeah. Why
yeah.
do Christians like Mega Sage? What's his name? WSD Mega Sage 007 on YouTube. Why do Christians like him, right, call homosexuality sodomy? I mean, don't they understand the difference between sexuality and rape? You know what I mean?
Well, sodomy, Jamie,
Yeah.
technically sodomy is like anal intercourse. So, like, I mean,
Hmm.
rape is like forcible, against a person's
Exactly.
consent. So, yeah, there is that association.
Yeah. It's a bit stupid if you think about it.
But yeah, George made a point that I want to respond to. Something I had never heard that before. The idea that somebody might be afraid of being converted to be gay or something like that. Which is that never even crossed my mind because I didn't think such a thing was actually possible. Huh.
I
Well,
didn't think it was possible either.
again, like in Greek society, gayness just wasn't condemned. It was an accepted lifestyle. So, like, they had more gays as a part of the population. Um, it really is, a lot of our behaviors are so um,
Yeah.
amenable to being molded and shaped and guided by our environment. Even though we have a certain genetic disposition, a lot of times, for example, in happiness, there's a set point in happiness that's about 50% genetic, but 40% of our happiness level is based on basically our environment, what we do and all. Another 10% is based on our circumstances. So that 50% together can actually determine how happy a person is. And so again, that principle would apply to this gay issue also.
You're right, George. And the fact that people are that influenced by their culture is just one more example showing we don't have free will.
Hmm.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, I think we should be careful here as well. We're not saying that we can cure being gay or anything like that, are we? We're not coming from that.
David,
From that
that's
angle.
that's a great question. That's an interesting
Hmm.
question because I think sometimes, I think that the answer to that may be that as an adult or a teenager, when somebody kind of like has the self-identification, the gender identification as gay, I think it may actually be too late for that. But I'm wondering if this conditioning, whether we're Democrat, Republican, communist, capitalist, law-abiding or criminal, if these behaviors can be molded very strongly at a very early age, at 2-3 years old, the question becomes, can gayness be molded like that? And that provides another layer of difficulty, complexity, because then people would be saying, well, like, it's wrong to condition a person to be either gay or straight at that age and all. That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm glad David brought that up. Um, Because I think one danger of realizing that people are conditioned by their environment and how they grow up and all their experiences, that might give some people reason to try to condition children in such a way that they grow up to be the certain sexual orientation they want them to be. And so maybe there's a danger in that. What do you think?
Well, I don't think we want to be going the way that some religious people do, where they kind of try to put gay people into therapy sometimes. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
actually prefer people getting real therapy from real professionals about real problems.
So we may
Right.
want to make a distinction, yeah, to the extent that let's say parents, consider gayness wrong, based on their religious beliefs, that it may be acceptable to kind of like try to guide their toddler toward, let's say if it's a guy, toward heterosexuality, but at a certain point, like in the teen years, when it's established that, the person, identifies with being gay, then I think at that point it would be wrong to try to reverse that, because at that point it seems evident that the conditioning in the past hasn't worked. So you might determine that actually that homosexuality would be more biological or genetic than other kinds.
Hmm.
Yeah, but we need to eliminate this problem with religion where gays are told that they're gonna burn in hell and stuff like that by religious fundamentalists and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that causes bullying as well. I mean, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
teenagers, a lot of teenagers get bullied for when they identify themselves as being gay or lesbian. Sometimes their peers will bully on them, and then they'll become depressed. And then as they get older, they'll turn to drugs or alcohol, and then it just gets worse and worse. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things is that because these people have these certain beliefs, especially they believe in free will, that does mean that they're going to try to blame and punish people for being the wrong sexual orientation. And so that's another reason why overcoming this illusion of free will get rid of that specific type of bullying that Jamie just mentioned.
I think you
Yeah.
can also get situations where where people marry, into whatever they feel is socially acceptable, and they kind of go their entire lives almost, just like almost living a lie. And
Yeah, and that's what causes the problems and causes divorces and all that. That's
right,
why, yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
I mean,
you're not being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
well,
there's
you're
things
not
in society, obviously.
Yeah, if someone
sure.
born a male identifies himself as being a female, like no matter what the age, right, always take it like seriously and get them to a psychologist and then get the psychologist to verify whether or not they are transgender.
Yeah.
I'm just cautious about us
Yeah.
kind of giving ammunition to the whole like gay conversion thing. With how you get testimonials from religious types who say they used to
Yes.
be gay and then God cured them. You know, I think we
David,
want to be careful about stepping in that.
David, I mean, it's a very powerful concern, but and we have to, like, in other words, like what we're saying is like, because we don't have a free will, we can convert like somebody who's had a life of crime, until a certain point. We can put them into a rehabilitation or reform institution that doesn't punish them and changes their behavior. So you're right. I mean, this can be applied to being gay, to being, Republican, Democrat, communist, socialist, capitalist, and all this can be applied to anything. Now the question becomes like, if we feel it's wrong to apply this to gender identity, what is it that we how do we approach that? What is our message? I think what I suggested before is that, like, if parents want their children to be heterosexual, and like when they're infants and toddlers, young children, they want to kind of like, for example, you're not going to like dress your boy in a dress, if whatever, or
Some
give your
some people
boy.
do.
Oh, I know. Or give the boy dolls, you know. So a lot of this conditioning happens. But you're right, David. I mean, this is, you know, it's like, at what point would it be wrong to continue to try to mold a child based on your preference like that? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very interesting.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Hmm.
How are we doing on time?
Looks like we're at just a little over 25 minutes.
Cool.
So yeah, um, is there anything else that we haven't mentioned that could be important to this issue?
Well, I already said my piece. Like I said, man, when it comes to gay community, it's simple. It's always been simple with me. If
Yeah,
you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone.
yeah.
Nothing more has to be said.
Yeah, I think it can be that simple, Will. And I just wanted to respond to something that was said a while back in the podcast about the whole gay pride thing. Is I'm like, wait a minute. All sorts, to me, gay pride is weird. It's sort of like, I mean, I'm afraid of people acting like, well, I'm better than you because I'm gay, or I'm better than you because I'm straight. And I think that the equality that we achieve through understanding that we don't have free will and that we all are doing what prior causes would cause us to do sort of eliminates the arrogance of being a so-called better sexual orientation or better gender identity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chandler, that's really important because, like, maybe on the next podcast or a future one, you know, pride has different meanings. In other words, like, I think sometimes with gay pride is that they don't want to be ashamed that they're gay, but certainly that pride shouldn't lead to their believing that actually being gay is in some way superior to being heterosexual. And so, like, it also goes to the issue of taking credit, you know, because a lot of times we are proud of our achievements, but if we don't have a free will, we can't logically attribute those achievements to us. So I think we might want to explore this whole issue of pride and how it just like how it, you know, some of our ideas about it have to be shifted or changed somewhat under this unfree will paradigm.
Yeah.
That
Well,
makes a lot of sense.
it's like what you said in your video 157 about telling kids that we don't have a free will and stuff. And Lee Hoodston was calling you like names and all this stuff. I mean, if he didn't believe in a free will, he wouldn't be judging you for your position on this. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but I think George mentioned a very important thing about different understandings of what pride is. I mean, I think a lot of people just mean pride in the sense that they don't have to feel bad or ashamed about something. It's just part of who they are. As long as it's not the arrogance type of pride, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, that
No,
makes sense.
it's the arrogant kind of pride that we're trying to eliminate with this no free will paradigm, because the free will belief goes a step further, doesn't it, George? It borderlines on narcissism, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job with this podcast and with our last one because, you know, even though there are a lot of issues such, you know, as climate change and global poverty and war and all sorts of problems like that, people tend to get really hung up on, you know, the gay marriage debate as well as the abortion debate, you know. They get really hung up on these things, and I would actually like to see people move past some of these things once they stop blaming each other and they've overcome the free will belief that they could focus together on how to stop climate change and do what's better for all life on the planet. That would be a much more positive direction to move into.
Yeah, and we can reduce bullying as well, obviously.
Yep.
Yes. And everybody will be happier and maybe they'll be blissed out like George Ortega would like to be.
Well, that's the goal. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah. Because happiness is what it's all about.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I guess we're almost at the 30-minute mark, so should I end this?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Alright, you've been listening to Free Will, Science, and Religion with Chandler Klebs, Jamie Soden, George Ortega, David Joseph, and WSD Time. We've covered some very important issues about how we can reduce blame, hatred, and bullying and move on to a more happy society and world. So we hope you've enjoyed everything. so far. And whether you agree or disagree, you can send us comments. Bye bye for now.